Good morning. Welcome to this press conference. With us is Entry Flight Director Leroy Kane for STS-114. I think Leroy will have a few remarks, and then we'll take questions.
Okay, good morning. It's great to be here with you again. Discovery is home, safe and sound. It's been a long day. It's been a long couple of weeks. A great mission, just an outstanding mission in every way. And it's been a long few years. But we're really pleased, couldn't be more pleased with how things went with the deorbit and landing. When I left the control center, the crew was just finishing doing their walk around, and I think at least Eileen may have had a few comments for y'all. And they look to be in great shape, in great spirits. So the flight control team is taking the rest of the day off and probably getting some much deserved rest over the next several days. But with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you have about deorbit and landing today.
Okay, start with questions here. Please state your name and affiliation prior to your question.
Deborah Fowler, Time Magazine. Mr. Kane, what was your moment of greatest anxiety, and at what point during the reentry were you confident that there was not a breach?
Well, I was pretty anxious all day, pretty much from the time we got here today and until the time we got the crew out of the vehicle. The more anxious part of all of that was the time between the go for the deorbit burn and the time that we had wheel stop. So that entire, more or less, better part of an hour was a pretty anxious time.
Okay. Let's go over here. Okay, Gina.
Gina Sinceri, ABC News. What did you say to your team in Mission Control after Discovery landed this morning?
Well, I just told the team, great job. It was my privilege and honor to be a part of the team and to work with them, and I meant that sincerely. It's one of the most capable teams I've ever been associated with, and as you know, we had a pretty trying couple of days with getting the vehicle deorbit and landed, mostly just because of weather. But the hours weren't very good. The team hung in there, rev after rev, both days. And just all the way through all of our training and all the way through the mission, I've been very proud of them, and I just let them know that.
Okay, let's go over here.
Patrick Peterson with Florida Today. Did you detect any abnormalities during the reentry? Was there anything not the way you expected it? And what was the reaction in the mission control when wheels touched down? Did you guys high five and cheer or not?
Well, of course, we wait until we get the crew off the vehicle to do a whole lot of celebrating, but a lot of happy people, a lot of happy faces, and I think at that point, folks are able to realize that that the mission has come to a great completion, and can let off a little bit of steam. But no high fives at main gear touchdown or anything like that. We're still very much in the middle of working the mission at that point until we get wheel stop and we get the vehicle safed and we get the high-speed turbo machinery turned off and the rest of the equipment safed and the crew off. But certainly once we accomplished that, we congratulated each other. I congratulated the team, and a lot of happy folks today to have Discovery and the Discovery crew back safely.
Go ahead with a follow-up.
Well, I was wondering, did you say there were or were not any abnormalities in reentry that you noticed that you did not expect?
We had only a couple of very minor anomalies in the systems, and they were completely insignificant.
Okay, let's go back here, Royce, to Bruce.
Bruce Nichols, Dallas Morning News. Would you have landed at Kennedy a few years back if this wasn't a return to flight mission that had been challenging in some ways? Were you being extra careful? And then I've got a follow-up.
Okay. Well, I guess you probably haven't watched very many of my landings. In all seriousness, no, I wouldn't have landed at Kennedy a few years ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago or whenever I started doing this job. I think we would have done exactly what we did today. We tried very hard to land in Florida yesterday as well as today. We laid out the strategy coming into the first day yesterday with our 2 opportunities to KSC, and then followed that up with what I felt like was a pretty good strategy for today. And we gave it our level best to land in Florida. Meteorology is tough stuff, and it's even more difficult on the Florida Peninsula. Our team does an outstanding job. They're the best in the world at what they do, but that doesn't mean that it's ever easy to land in Florida. So we gave it our level best. I don't think it was anything different than what we've done in previous years or on previous missions.
Does this give you momentum, the success today, momentum headed into hopefully an early recovery from the foam problem, or are you even thinking about that?
Well, I think naturally it does give us, it gives us momentum. It's a beginning for us. It's a new beginning. It's a fresh start. It's an important beginning for us. It's an important mission for us. It's an important milestone in the human spaceflight endeavor. And so we're going to take advantage of this very successful test flight, and we're going to do what we do in this business, which is learn everything that we can. We're duty-bound to go away and learn everything that we can while the vehicle is being turned around and processed before the next flight, and we will do that. And the next flight will be a test flight as well, and that's the way it'll go. You know, I often have to remind people that if this was easy, anybody could do it, and everybody would be doing it if it were easy. And quite frankly, it is not. It is extremely difficult. For a lot of years, we made it look, I think, relatively easy and routine. But for those of us that have been in the business for as long as we have, you don't ever forget about the fact that it's difficult to get into and out of low Earth orbit. So human spaceflight is a risky, difficult endeavor, and that's not different with or without this most recent mission.
Okay, let's go to
Eric Berger with the Houston Chronicle. Had a couple of questions. First of all, after 4 wave-offs this morning, when you finally gave the crew a go for Edwards Air Force Base, was there a sense of relief or happiness inside Mission Control? Could maybe you talk a little bit about sort of what sort of it felt like in there when you finally were go for land?
Well, we did wave off 2 successive opportunities to KSC this morning. The first opportunity, as well as the second opportunity, they were serial at KSC, of course, and then our third opportunity was the first opportunity to Edwards today. The team was very focused at any moment in time. They were ready to proceed if the weather gave us an opportunity to get to the point where we could deorbit today to either one of the first opportunities to KSC. We just didn't get to that point. And similarly, when we waved off KSC altogether and proceeded toward our third opportunity of the day, the first Edwards, they were similarly postured and ready to go. So I think the way I would just characterize it is that the team was poised and ready, and once we were able to get the weather to cooperate at the landing site, we pressed on and did the deorbit and entry and landing.
Okay, Mark, or Eric, you have another follow-up? Go ahead.
Just one more follow-up. I'm just wondering, with about 16 minutes to go in the flight until landing, did your thoughts drift at all to Columbia?
I don't know if I can give you any specific time or moment when my thoughts drifted to Columbia. My thoughts over the past several years drifted to Columbia thousands of times, literally. There really probably hasn't a day gone by that I haven't thought about it, about the Columbia mission and crew. And so today was no different in that regard.
Mark Carreau, also from the Houston Chronicle. I had 2 questions. What were the weather factor or weather factors that your decision turned on today, and I had a follow-up, please.
Okay. When we first started looking at the weather in Florida last night when I got here, we were looking at the possibility of showers and rain within 30 miles. We were generally looking at a similar forecast as what we had yesterday when we showed up to work. And as the day progressed, there was some development offshore that was more significant in terms of volume as well as intensity than what we had anticipated. But nevertheless, we continued on as long as we reasonably could do so. On the first opportunity, we regathered ourselves and went for the second opportunity. The things that were really bothering me today were the showers that we had inside the 30-mile circle, in addition to what turned out to be a fairly electrified set of conditions in the area. As the weather pilot was flying around and as we continued to observe, we saw a lot of lightning in the area. We saw continued development of not only showers and rain, but thunderstorms. And so those are not things that we're willing to fly in, of course. And then it became an exercise of, well, are they going to move out of the circle? And if so, is it going to happen in time for me to make a decision on the second opportunity? And really probably with about an hour before decision time on the second opportunity, we saw a trend that was positive. And that's really what I needed to see. I needed to see the trend turn around and become positive at some point. We saw that happen. And I began to formulate the kind of conditions that I would need to see and the things I would need to hear from the weather experts before I would be willing to get comfortable with the day in Florida. And it was only about 10 minutes after that point when we had a couple of developments well inside the circle, in fact, not far from the SLF, that were totally unanticipated and seemingly random. These two cloud showers developed. One of them looked to be at least a shower initially. And so that kind of sealed the day for me. Up to that time, we had seen a number of things that, as I mentioned, we were somewhat were unanticipated. And I guess you could say that was kind of the last straw. I wasn't terribly confident we were going to be able to clear the situation in terms of the fact that it was very electrified and we did have the showers in the area. But we at least had a trend that was moving in the right direction until those two developments occurred. And at that point, I knew there was no way that we were going to be able to get comfortable. And of course, with about 30 or 40 minutes remaining before decision time, I decided to just go ahead and wave off the day in Florida because we knew we had a great day in Edwards.
Okay, let's go right here.
Kathy Bellich, WFTV in Orlando, the ABC affiliate. How did you feel at the moment of touchdown when you realized this was a safe landing personally? Did you pray to yourself? Did your eyes fill with tears? How did you feel personally? And then I have another question.
I felt outstanding. I felt great. I think the whole team felt great. I don't know that I really relaxed. I'm not sure I've relaxed yet. I probably relaxed a little bit since I left the control center. But it really was an incredible feeling, almost a little bit unreal that we had just accomplished what we did. And I think it was a time to reflect once we got the crew out and were able to congratulate the team. I think we've all had at least a couple of seconds or minutes to reflect on what we've been a part of. I'm very humbled by just having the opportunity to be a part of this team, and so I'm sure I'll reflect on that more as time goes by. But in short, I've really felt it's an incredibly happy and gratified feeling.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yes. This is a question out of concern. The the chunk of foam that fell during the launch, you're responsible for a safe landing. So what kind of assurances do you want before you are responsible for the next safe landing that something like that won't happen again, given the recommendations that didn't completely get taken care of before this flight? What kind of assurance would you personally want to have?
Well, I think my assurances will be very similar to other members of our larger team, and that will be that we're gonna go tackle this problem. There's already a team of folks that are working on it vigorously, day and night, as I understand it. I'm sure more of us will join those teams as we become less busy with the 114 mission and we have time available to do so. But we're going to tackle this problem. It's a huge a team that's already engaged in doing so. And I think we'll do it just the way that we have tackled similar problems before. We're not going to be satisfied until we prove to ourselves that we understand what's happening with the vehicle with regard to the foam. And we're not going to be satisfied until we prove to ourselves that we have rectified the situation and we're safe to go fly again. It'll be very similar to the process that we went through in many areas as we led up to return to flight. So we're going to put the rigor into the test and the analysis that's necessary, and we're going to go where the data leads us. I don't know where that's going to be, but I do know that in the end, if we are able to get comfortable and ready to go, say that we're ready to go fly again, it'll be because we've done the work, and we put the necessary rigor that the process requires to make sure that we're safe to go fly again the next test flight.
Okay, I think at this point we have some media at the Kennedy Space Center with questions, so we'll go there for a few questions.
This is Stephen Young with spaceflightnow.com. Sorry if I missed this earlier, but were you actually no-go for the KSC landing opportunities at the actual landing times?
I don't have the data with me, but as I understand it, both of the landing opportunities today, the official landing observation at landing time were no-go. They were both no-go for at least, I believe, showers and rain showers within the 30-mile circle, and there may have been some other conditions that we were no-go for. I don't have the actual landing observation in front of me, but as I understand it, both of the opportunities were, in fact, no-go today for the per the official observation at landing time.
And did the PLT get any stick time during today's landing?
Yeah, he did. As a matter of fact, Vegas took over manual flight control just after we went subsonic. We had a period of about 25 or 30 seconds before we intercepted the heading alignment cone. And so per our procedures that we've practiced and trained to, this was a case where Vegas would take over once we went subsonic and before we got to the HAC minus 10-second point. So he got somewhere on the order of about 20 seconds of flying time approaching the HAC, and I was very pleased that we had the opportunity to give him that experience today.
Tracy Watson, USA Today. Mr. Kane, can you tell us, you said earlier that this was an important milestone for human spaceflight, and I was wondering if you could just spell out for us why you think that, and then I have a follow-up. Thank you.
Well, I think we're all keenly aware of what our go-forward plan is relative to the human space exploration objectives in the presidential vision, as well as stated by our new administrator. And we're also keenly aware that that the steps leading up enabling us to take the next steps in that direction are, in order, return the shuttle safely to flight, complete the assembly of the International Space Station, and then move forward with the new programs and initiatives. And so this flight is one of the first extremely important milestones in the roadmap to get us further down the path in human space exploration.
Thank you. And just to follow up, I don't know all the criteria by which you grade landings, but I'm wondering if you can talk about Commander Collins' landing, and specifics would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a great landing. And I, of course, haven't had the opportunity to dissect the landing data. We will do that as a matter of course. Some of us get great enjoyment out of doing that. It's part of what we do. It's part of the learning process. But in all seriousness, it was a great landing. And I'm sure Eileen will be very happy with it. I'm sure she is very happy with it. And I don't have any of the specific landing details in terms of the parameters, if that's what you're asking, Tracy. I don't have that today.
This is Leo Enright from Irish Television. A related question, and then, if I may, a follow-up. Will we see pilot point of view video? It just flashed up on the screen for a few seconds. I don't know, did the camera fail, or is there going to be, are we going to see that at a later stage?
I would imagine you'll have an opportunity to see that at some later point. And as far as whether or not there was some failure, there was no failure in the HUD, certainly, that I'm aware of. Anytime that we try to bring the HUD video down, it has to go through a fairly complex series of circuits in the network just to get it off the vehicle and then through the network system and then to you wherever you might be. And so I don't know what it was that you might have been seeing in the way of dropout, and if what you were seeing was related to your direct, the area that you were in, but I doubt if it was a problem with the system on board. I do imagine that you'll have an opportunity to see the entire video, though. I would assume that at some point Public Affairs will make that available if they have access to it.
Much broader question, finally. That was the fact that I think everyone agrees this mission and the events surrounding it have brought this shuttle program to the attention of a whole new generation out there. And I have to say that our younger viewers are frankly incredulous that whether that you could easily fly a small aircraft in, or even perhaps a microlight, is not suitable for a 90-ton space plane. I wondered if you could maybe try and explain that to the younger audience.
Yeah, it's, the space shuttle and the orbiter by itself are just amazing vehicles, amazing human engineering feats. They, like any machine, have drawbacks. And one of the drawbacks of the space shuttle orbiter is that when you get ready to bring it home and land back on Earth, you can't really tolerate low clouds, for example, because we only have one shot at the landing. It's a huge glider. I don't have go-round capability. And so when we do it, it has to be perfect the very first time because we only have that one opportunity. So from a very pedestrian standpoint, I would tell you that fundamentally it's because we only have one shot, and that one shot we have to take the greatest advantage of all of the capabilities around us, including clear skies and no low clouds and not flying through rain and things of that nature. So those are things that go along with this, the design of this amazing vehicle. And maybe in the future, we will have other vehicles that will not have as constraining of placards for landing, for example. But that's where we are with this vehicle, and that's the reason why.
Thank you. Tarek Malik with Space.com and Space News. Leroy, given that you knew the health of Discovery going into this landing, and that you had great weather there at Edwards, how straightforward was this decision at the time to go for the deorbit burn? Was it easy for you then? Were you very comfortable with that?
I was. Once we got to the point of waving off the second opportunity to KSC and moved in the direction of landing at Edwards out in California, I knew already going into the day that we had a pretty good weather forecast out in California. And while we were in the midst of the first two KSC opportunities, we went and talked about the Edwards weather as well, just so that I would be prepared and know what to expect out there. So now I knew going into it that we had what was shaping up to be a really nice day. When we first turned our attention toward Edwards and we started to head down that path in earnest, the winds were just a little bit higher in magnitude than what I expected them to be, but still very, very much within limits and a pretty benign situation. So that probably gave me a little bit of pause, but not from the standpoint of worrying whether or not the site was going to be available. It was just a little bit different setup than what I had anticipated, but again, it was very benign. So once we got to that point, in short, it was pretty straightforward, and we had a few systems things to deal with on the way down, but they were relatively minor.
Okay, I think that's all the questions from Kennedy, so we'll come back here for a couple of more questions. My watch says it's early, but something inside me says it's very late, so we'll probably wrap this up before too much longer, but go ahead.
Jim Oberg with NBC, and good evening, folks. It feels that way. Sorry, I wasn't here earlier, didn't know if it came up, but Leroy, can you talk about the communications during entry, your data and your voice comm, whether you had any outages that you were getting concerned about, or whether it was just where you wanted it to be?
Comm was great. That's another thing about the Edwards opportunities is that we'll typically hand down from the first TDRS satellite that we're on, the TDRS West satellite, directly to the Dryden S-band system right there at the ground site. So we don't have a TDRS handover like we do when we land in Florida, which we don't always have when we land in Florida, but is often the case. And so from a network standpoint, it's a little bit more straightforward out at Dryden. The comm performance was just outstanding today, pretty much seamless in terms of the hand down to Dryden. The systems there performed wonderfully, both the S-band and the UHF. All the tracking systems worked as expected, and we really didn't have any outages, no outages.
Okay, Jeff, do you have a question?
Graham Richardson from CTV News. Mr. Kane, I appreciate that you have a lot of things going on when you start the reentry, but surely, given where you were with Columbia and where you were today, you must have been thinking about Columbia specifically today, or were you?
I tell you honestly, I don't think today was different for me than most days since the Columbia accident. Of course, I did think about Columbia today, but again, that part of my day in and day out activity is really very similar to what it's been like for the last several years. And it's great to be flying again. It's a great tribute to the Columbia crew that we're flying again. I know they would want us to be flying again. I know that they would be proud of us, and that I'm at peace with the fact that we are where I think they would want us to be.
Mark, did you have?
Mark Carreau from the Houston Chronicle. Two quick questions. Did you get any WB-57 or any OBR coverage since you had to go to California. And did you ever think about, or did you let it be a factor in your decision that Discovery will have to go through sort of an additional time for processing? I think the decision was pretty clear-cut. I just wonder if that was factored in, or it was just totally a weather decision.
Well, you know, we gave it our level best to land in Florida, and we always do. We gave it the college try. I mean, I hung in there as long as I felt like it was reasonable. Today, we sort of held the crew off on fluid loading for the first opportunity. Once I realized that it just didn't look like we were going to get there. And then we gave them a go for fluid loading in the second opportunity, and it wasn't long after that, as I mentioned earlier, that we had some new developments that just was kind of the last straw for me. And so I wanted to get them out of fluid loading, and so we could set up for the third opportunity of the day. But we want to land this vehicle back at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where the processing takes place. It makes the most sense programmatically. It makes the most sense from the standpoint of the mission that we are trying to accomplish. And when we can't do that, our first priority backup is the Edwards Air Force Base in the Mojave Desert, and that really hasn't changed in the number of years that I've been doing this anyway. So that's the way we approached it again today, and so. And I forget what your first question was, Mark.
I know there's a lot of interest in getting coverage from WB or some other aircraft, and I don't know if that wasn't possible or on this shot or not.
It's a good question. After it became clear that we weren't going to be able to make it into Florida today, we started asking the team whether or not we could reposition the WBs and the assets quickly enough to be able to do the observations for an Edwards landing. I don't think we were able to do that. The initial feedback I got from the team was that we couldn't respond that quickly in terms of being able to move the airplanes to the other side of the country. However, I do think we had an effort underway to rally some other assets, airborne or otherwise, I don't know, and I don't know what their capabilities were, but I did hear some discussion among our engineering team about some efforts to do that for the Edwards opportunity, but I got busy with the job at hand, so I never verified, I never had an opportunity to verify whether or not we were able to get any kind of observation from a different platform.
Okay, I think last question here maybe from Bruce.
You said, Bruce Nichols, Dallas Morning News, you said there were some minor things that you were looking at system-wise when you were coming in, but they turned out to be minor. Could you just tell us a little bit about what those were? And following up a little bit on Mark, the second one would be, what would be the possibilities for assets for a landing at Edwards, to substitute for the WB-57s?
On the last question first, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know what other assets on the West Coast were available or not. I just don't know the answer to that question. On the first question, the kinds of things we dealt with, we had a microwave scanning beam, part of our landing system, the inertial, the instrument landing system, I should say, a ground station at the Edwards 22 runway. The azimuth part of that system failed over to the backup string. It's a redundant system by design. And it's a failure that had occurred a couple of days ago when we began to check out the landing site. And so it happened, that happened today. Turned out we were able to get the primary system back working again. We stayed on the backup system, but we regained our redundancy well before landing time. So that problem kind of went away for us. We had one of the xenon lights were failed on the 04 runway approach. We had, I think APU-3's, one of its exit gas temperature measurements was erratic, instrumentation kind of failure. We had a port failure on one of the display units in the cockpit, a redundant port failure, so it was transparent to the crew. That level of things, and that's basically the handful of things that we dealt with. We never really got to the point where we lost anything more than redundancy and nothing of significance.
Okay, with that, we'll wrap up the press conference. Thank you very much.